Hello and welcome back to another episode of Spawn Trap's Hit Pause MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse podcast that is burdened with glorious purpose. I am Till, and I'm joined by the first time ever on this podcast,
Yeah.
Court, who's usually
Court
my co
FTW.
Court FTW, who's usually joins me for our gaming podcast, our main podcast. But you and I just rewatched Loki season one. You just watched, right, for the first time Loki season one
Just finished it on, was it Sunday? I think.
on Sunday. Okay,
Yeah. We finished the last two episodes on Sunday.
nice. Loki season two is starting this week as of recording this.
Yeah. Isn't
Um,
it Wednesday or Thursday? The
it
5th?
is whenever the fifth. So that would be Thursday, right? Wait, what's
Yeah.
today? Today's Tuesday.
Yes.
Yes,
I
today's
know we had a holiday yesterday
Tuesday.
or like a day to remember.
I'm just losing track of my days in general. That's just how it goes. Um, yeah, you're new on this podcast here.
Yeah.
Um, and I honestly don't know. What is your whole experience with the MCU or Marvel movies or TV shows in general?
So I've seen the Avengers, like the two-parter with the
The
Infinity
last
Gauntlet.
one, yeah.
Yeah, the last one or whatever. And then I've seen Doctor Strange.
Okay.
I've seen,
Which Doctor Strange, the first one or the most recent one?
I think both,
Okay.
but I'm trying to remember what the second one was about because I know it had something to do with the like Infinity War, I think, maybe. Um and then I've
Okay.
seen the what's it? The third Spider-Man movie
Hmm.
with yeah, because I feel like I kind of gravitate toward the time travel of it because I
And
find
like
it
the
really
multiverse
fascinating.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that because I like the concept of time travel and I like how um certain people depict it, and because like time travel there's so much to it and there's so many laws to it as well, so I always find it really fascinating to watch those kind of movies.
I'm the same way. Uh, I'm like I'm so into like time travel and fiction, and a lot of my like
Hmm.
favorite stuff involves time travel. So yeah,
Yeah.
Loki. At first I didn't even think, but I guess I should have. It should have been obvious to me like that's what this was. Maybe it was just worrying to me when they first showed off the trailers for season one.
Hmm.
Um, but like if it was more, I guess if they presented it more like, hey, this is going to be like a huge time travel thing, then I would have been like more ecstatic about it. But
Hmm.
because it's Loki, I know everybody loves Loki. I'm not the
Yeah.
biggest fan of Loki. I'm like I don't hate Loki. I like Loki. I'm just not like super obsessed like everybody else is. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
Loki show, whatever. But
It's
it's
because
like,
he's hot. That's why people are obsessed. It's like, was
but
it Tom Middleston or
yeah,
whatever?
Tom
They're
Hiddleston,
like,
yeah.
oh my
Oh, not
god.
Owen Wilson.
Not a right. Oh,
um,
wow.
but yeah, the time travel aspect of it is what gets me involved for sure. I would say that you're miss now. Like I this might be like a big offense to like myself or Jordan or like anybody else watching, that those are like the select few Marvel movies that you watch.
Yeah.
But I would say like that's fine. I don't care. Like watch whatever you're interested in, because I have the same feeling about comics. I don't read every single comic that is
Yeah, there's
available.
certain characters that I could care less
Yeah.
about. Like again, even with Thor,
Hmm.
I was like, I heard they were great movies, and I don't doubt that and stuff, but I just have no interest. Except for now watching Loki, I kind of have an interest to watch the like Ragnarok movie, just
Ragnarok
to
is amazing.
yeah, because they mention it so often in the show
Yeah.
and they kind of like reference those things. So I was into because I'm the type where when it comes to spoilers, things
Hmm.
don't spoil. Like if you can tell me a spoiler, it's not necessarily going to ruin it for me. I almost prefer knowing the ending, and then I really enjoy the lead up to it and picking out the hints that they leave to lead
Okay.
up to that, because
Yeah.
I think it's like a writer's brain,
Sure.
because because then that way I can be like, oh, this would be
Filling in
really
the
cool to
pieces
filling in
yourself.
the blanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And because I hate like not knowing, and then I kind of assume, and then I get disappointed where I'm like, oh, that was the twist.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Um, so yeah, I kind of like, now that I kind of know certain things about Ragnarok, I'm like, okay, so now if I look back, I can kind of catch a few things here and there that they make reference to,
Yeah.
and it's more interesting, and it kind of brings more depth to it as well.
I would say the Thor movies, you don't need to watch the first Thor movie. You don't need to watch the second Thor movie. The second Thor movie is sort of like panned. A lot of people don't like it.
Yeah.
But it is a very important movie in like the whole like arc of the Infinity Saga.
Oh,
But pretty much the important stuff they kind of recap in Endgame. So it's like you don't really need to
okay.
watch that. So Ragnarok, I would say, is the only one you need to watch. I would say like if you're only interested in like the aspect of the multiverse and stuff like that, you do not need to see Thor: Love and Thunder. So
Okay.
watch Ragnarok. I would say that's the only one you
Yeah.
need to watch.
Okay.
Um,
Good to know.
I will say there is one that is an important one that I feel like you should watch before Loki season 2, and that
Which
would
is,
be Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
I did want to watch, because again, that they make reference to time travel even in, was it Infinity War, right?
Yeah,
They reference that. So I think that's, and I heard it's also a really great movie and stuff. So I think that would be, yeah, one that I would want to, maybe I'll watch it
yeah.
tonight. Maybe.
Okay.
So
Yeah, me and Jordan both love the movie. A lot of people hate the movie. I think it's like ranked really low in ratings. Um, but we both liked it, and it's going to be important, I think, for um some aspects of Loki season 2, at least thinking.
interesting.
So it's definitely one to watch. This is a spoiler podcast, but because Court is not caught up on a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to be strictly talking Loki season 1. If you have not watched Loki season 1, you should probably do that because Loki season 2 is happening pretty soon. Have you watched any trailers or anything for Loki season 2?
No,
Okay, so you don't have
I
like
don't want, I
any.
don't, no idea. So we can watch the season 2 trailer and I can react to it and be like, now that I've seen the first season, because obviously I wouldn't want to watch the trailer up into like
Yeah,
until I had watched the entire
I'd
season,
say
and then
probably better to go in blind. I mean, it is playing while we're talking right now in our visual context rectangle,
okay.
but not like in a viewable state where YouTube can give us copyright claims.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that
so
what you do to get around
yeah,
that?
it's pretty much. We got like in our second or third podcast, like we had an issue with that, so this has been here since
Yeah.
then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um. So your introduction to Loki was Avengers: Infinity War, then.
Yeah, where he grabs the block and then just vanishes. And that was,
Well,
and I,
that was Endgame.
Endgame, yeah.
So the second part,
So
yeah.
yeah, because he dies, but he dies in Ragnarok,
No, he
and
didn't
then,
die in Ragnarok. He died in Infinity War.
okay, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie too. And again, it was a 3-hour movie. Watched it once in the theaters. I love, like, I really liked it, but and
Yeah.
then never watched it again. So, because it's like with these movies too, they're the type that I would only really watch once.
Right.
Like, again, they're good movies and stuff, but it's like, and I'm very selective with what I watch. But yeah, they're ones where, because the hype's around them, and then I have friends that are into it, so I'd be like, yeah, like I'm down to watch it because I know I'm going to enjoy it. But
Sure.
would I ever sit there and flick on Netflix and then be like, oh, the next movie's out, or like your Disney Plus, right?
Yeah,
And
Disney
then
Plus,
just
yeah.
throw on that. The only times I've ever done that was actually Spider-Man. I think out of all of them, Spider-Man's my favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man would be like it's on or you're in the mood to watch, you would pull up
Yeah, I
Spider-Man.
totally throw it on. I'd be like, because I
Yeah.
know it's going to be funny and great all at the same time. So, yes.
All right. Um, so, uh, so you're kind of like diving into this series, and they do reference. I think they reference stuff in the MCU a lot in this show. I
Yeah.
rewatching it, trying to think about it. Is there any point where like you're lost watching it?
Um, I think when they're mentioning the different planets, I feel like I should have known some of them, like Lamentus
That was
or
just
Lament.
introduced in Loki. So
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
I feel like okay, I felt that some of them I should have known. I'm like, was
Hmm.
this from a different movie? So I'm like, if anything, I might have missed particular hints at other movies and references to the different universes and stuff. Um, but I also like, but I feel like Loki had a lot of feels that I got from I watched the Flash movie as much as I didn't wanna support Ezra Miller. I was invited and and I was like and
Right.
again, it's time travel, so I was
Yes.
like
Yeah.
and it was a really good movie.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, it re and so there's, like, references to old things there.
Hmm.
So I got that when I was watching Loki with the old Lokis, but at the same time, um, I from working at a gaming store, I knew a lot of these characters already that were going to show up before they showed up in the series because we had gotten that line of,
Yeah.
figurines. But again, it doesn't spoil anything for me because if I don't know, then I won't
Hmm.
know. And
Right.
then when they showed up in the series, I'm like, "Oh, that's the alligator. Oh, okay,
Right.
yeah." I remember, and yeah, he's with the boy, but he's like his own thing. Okay, I get it. I get it.
That part. So when they were first shown, it was actually in a post-credit moment in one of the episodes. So I'm not
Ooh.
too sure if you actually watched that or not.
Like, at like, when they run the credits and then you're
So
waiting
when,
for it to show up for next episode, click here.
well, yeah, but so like one of the episodes, I think that was like episode 3 or something, where he gets pruned, and then after the credits in that episode, he wakes up on the where the end of time is.
Yeah,
And then he's like, "Is this hell?" Or I'm spoiling the end post credit scene, but he says,
yeah,
"Is this hell? And am I dead?" And then he sees the other Lokis there, and they're saying, "No, but you will be if you don't follow us."
yeah,
That's when those characters are introduced.
yeah,
Um, and I think they might have recapped that on like a previously on thing in the next episode.
maybe.
Yeah. But like
I don't know, I'm
if you didn't watch a post credit scene, you would have missed that. The first
probably.
introduction of him.
I
Yeah.
mean, I do remember when he wakes up and then, yeah, he's on there and then we watched immediately after, like, the next episode because
Yeah.
we did it in 2 weeks, I think. Did it pretty quickly. We have, like, a list of, like, shows that we're trying to get through.
Yeah, same.
And Loki was like I had to move Loki up because of the
Hmm.
new season.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it was like I actually started watching Loki a year ago, I would say.
Yeah, and you're just finishing it now.
Yeah. So I like rewatched like the couple I was like, if there's a train in this episode, then
Hmm.
yeah, I've totally seen this episode. And then sure
Yeah.
enough, there's a train. I'm like, yep. I don't but I don't remember it.
Right, right. Jordan watched like the first half of Miss Marvel, and he's like, eventually I'll watch the second half. It's the
Yeah.
same 6 episodes. And the Marvels movie is coming out, so he kind of has to. So I gotta like keep bugging him about that. Um,
And that's
y-
all on Disney Plus, right? That
yeah,
these okay.
in the
Again,
Marvel
it's like if I
section.
saw them, I would have been like, "Bleh."
Yeah. Actually, funny enough, I think Jordan stopped watching at this point, but or before this point. But Miss Marvel actually kind of a little bit has to do with time travel. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just like
Now, Miss
one episode.
yeah, Miss Marvel is not Captain Marvel. It's not Brie Larson, right? Or is it?
uh two different characters, yes. If we're
Okay.
talking about
Yeah.
MCU, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I know. I feel like that's another thing too with this goddamn fucking universe. It's like, all right, so like which Marvel are we talking about?
And
And
yeah,
and
in
now I do remember watching the second Doctor Strange because it had
mhm.
Vision. the witch, the
Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch, yeah, it
Yeah.
had her, and then because that's another show that you would have had to have watched and then have gotten, like, some of that reference as well.
In
So,
for are you talking about the Marvels or are you talking about?
yeah, like, because in the 2nd Doctor Strange, where he has to go to Scarlet Witch
Yes.
for
Oh,
help,
this Doctor
and then
Strange. Yes. Yeah.
it's, like, referencing her show that had just, like,
Yeah.
happened and stuff like that, yeah, so I was like, "I'm not
But you
watching
kind of
these
got
things."
you kind of got. I think Doctor Strange mentioned the important part that's relevant to that
Yes.
movie in one sentence, right?
Yeah, pretty much, like, just was spoiler, 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 spoiler.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Uh. I forget what I
So
was going to
Loki.
say. Yeah, Loki. Loki season one. So yeah, what did you think of the show?
I really liked it.
Mhm.
Um, I did enjoy kind of the twist that happens where starts off where like Loki's obviously been in time travel jail and ends up working for them to help find this variant, and it ends up being himself, which then it turns into him against the TVA
Mhm.
and how they're the enemy and stuff like that. So I usually kind of enjoy those twists. um but then at the same time it was a little bit predictable, I guess, where you're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
of course they're not real. Of course it's like this big thing." And I
Yeah,
actually
Wizard of
I
Oz
didn't like
situation.
yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't like the he who
He
it
Who
like all
Remains.
is yeah, he who remains. I didn't like him. As much like he was too like goofy and stupid, I guess. I didn't really like his take.
At least that
Um
variant is.
That variant of it,
Yeah.
yeah, so but then I liked the ending. So, it's like so I
Yeah.
liked the show. I found some of it was like, "Oh, okay," but it was entertaining through and through, and then at the very end, there was that one twist where he's in a different TVA, like,
Yeah.
universe, and I was like and then if it leaves me saying, "Oh, shit," at the end, then you did a good job.
Now you okay? So I'm gonna since we're both like obsessed with time travel here, I'm
Mhm,
gonna be bringing up like questions about time travel.
'kay.
So, um, I think that kind of their answers that the TVA is not. They keep saying it's outside of time,
Mhm.
and just the fact that the TVA changes is I don't know. I feel like no, it's somewhere within the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to time travel theory and stuff, it generally everything is a part of one big master scheme, I guess. Like but then it depends on what universe you're wanting to create out of it.
Yeah.
So, like, and this is what like not to plug in like me, like I'm writing a book, blah blah, because
Yeah.
unless the book's done, then it's something to plug.
You
But
got to
if
stick to like one theory of time travel. With like you got to
yes,
commit to it. But so many times, like this is my biggest issue with time travel. Is that every time I've seen it in fiction, there's never a commitment to it. It's like we're establishing this one rule, and
yeah,
then, but we're going to make an exception for the plot for this one time. And I'm like, no,
always,
it doesn't make sense at that point. But no, go
right?
ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I struggle with, like, when you're trying to make your own idea, when it or if you're writing your own story about time travel, like, you have to have, like, still a law,
Right.
and but this is why I liked Loki because it had the kind of the same idea of, like, the one book that I was trying to figure out writing, because that's the biggest part about trying to write it is that I have to literally build this entire, like, law and physics and theory and universe and stuff from like, just so that the time travel aspect of it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the TVA was probably the most easiest way where it's just it's almost like its own little world, and it has and it like I just think of it as a hallway with multiple doors, and it's just one singular area that isn't affected by time, and then the different doors go to the different time slots basically. And that's
Right.
what the TVA kind of was with their doors, where they were their own entity. They lived in like it's like
So like it's sort of like its own pocket thing they're trying to establish it as.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it like this even goes into, with World of Warcraft. More
Sure.
like there was, like, time travel, but there I think it was Shadowlands where, the one antagonist, she breaks open the sky, and then there's this whole other world, and that's the world where when you die, your spirit passes through, and then they send you off. So that's, like, their own society that takes care of those spirits to make sure they bring them to the right appropriate heavens in a way, so that they
Okay.
have a good afterlife. So with the TVA or the aspect of time travel, you have to have like this separate entity of like the control of like, okay, we're here and we control the time. We try to, keep everything in order and stuff, which is basically the job of the TVA. And they're set aside outside of that timeline because, like, yeah, because that's what would make sense.
I still feel like I feel like they were told one thing,
When you
but
find
because
out
the
that they're all variants and
yeah,
stuff and that they've been lied to, that's when it like, you're like, "Oh, okay, so now I know who the antagonist is," but then it almost, um, destroys the theory of the TVA,
yeah,
of being outside of the timeline,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like
So
I think maybe well, I mean we're gonna get answers to season 2 hopefully, but
hopefully.
I feel like that just everything about the TVA they were lied about,
Mhm.
or they're lied to. Um, like there's a couple things out. There's a couple other things that I'm thinking about, like um them saying they don't know what's happening at the end of time. The time keepers are untangling the end of time. So, and when they mentioned the where things go to get pruned, like Sylvie's asking what happens, like nobody knows. It's just like that's where they go in the future. So it
But
sounds
then
like they're like
they were
before.
they were
Yeah.
able to come back, and then, like, that was kind of one thing that I noticed was when,
Hmm.
Morbius, he
Mobius, not
Mobius,
Morbius.
I'm like, "Morbius," I'm like,
Yeah.
"It's Morbin time." When he gets pruned, but then comes back, and the woman's, like, not even phased when she doesn't know stuff. She's like, "Ah,
Yeah.
you again." I would've been like, "Holy fuck,
Yeah.
you're not dead," and then I'd prune myself to be like, "Well, it's not the end," like,
Yeah. Well, she was aware that Loki wasn't dead necessarily. They just
Yeah,
get sent to a different point in the timeline. Because she mentioned that to Sylvie.
but
But that whole process, like the where they're reaching the end of time, and I think it's the fifth episode. Um, that whole like rewatching the show, I didn't think about it then, but rewatching this show, I'm like that kind of presents a problem
yeah.
in a few different ways. So there's just like you said, like yeah, he's able to come back and everything. I think the biggest problem for me is everything everything that's being pruned is being sent to that point in time.
So it'd
But
be populated in a way because it wouldn't have to be just Lokis that survived, let's be honest.
well, they say that they're survivors. That everybody else dies from Eliath. That's what they're trying to claim. But I think the biggest problem for me is why is everything just not appearing there at the same time? Because wouldn't they all be sent like if all of time like the present and everything is happening all at once like they're kind of saying
Yeah.
and then stuff starts branching out and you're like okay let's prune that, wouldn't that have been sent like that's all happening in the past um at the end of time, wouldn't everything that's being pruned from the past be showing up there at the exact same time and not
Yeah,
in
because it's the
segments like they
end,
were showing? Yeah.
right? So then and again, this is where it's so hard to write time travel
Yeah.
because then you get people asking those questions because 'cause they're like, "Well, if you're saying this, then why didn't this
Yeah.
happen?" It's like, "Oh, well,
For me, the
because."
easy answer is it's for the plot. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't get any sort of like character progress at the end, and the show wouldn't
E
make sense. But
Exactly, right? So, yeah, that's like because even, like, when I try to work my own theory with my own stories and stuff with time travel, it's like you have to have exceptions and things that but you have to have a reason
a
or a good
reason,
reason for
yeah,
things, and, because then it's like, okay, so now that, Sylvie went and killed the last guy that remains, you know now it's kind of been like, okay, so what's gonna happen? Or it like wouldn't the world just entirely implode? Like everything were to just kind of collapse in on itself, and then that
Mhm.
timeline were to just be annihilated, and then but then the other timelines that still exist, like because he said there was like tri timeline or like there's three of them, then the other one would just kind of exist. Because there's probably like that was like a thing too. You can add in like parallels to time travel.
Mhm.
Um Where there's always gonna be an alternative, like, world, and that's why, like, he ended up in a different TVA, so that's kind of my almost theory behind it, is that there's literally there's 3 different
He got sent
timelines.
there before he got stabbed, by the way. But it was already visually presenting the timeline as branching out when Sylvie sent him to
Yeah,
that other TVA.
yeah,
So I get that kind of makes sense that it exists already. Also, she used He Who Remains' tempad or wrist thing, whatever he
to
had.
send
Yeah, to send him
Loki
to
somewhere,
that.
yeah.
So it might have been like a different kind of programmed TVA or something. I don't know. Um,
Yeah,
but I they kind of explain at the beginning of the episode or the beginning of the series and the end of the series, um, how before He Who Remains created the TVA, there was several timelines. There were several different universes that were parallel to each other. And
and then he
everybody,
made 1.
yeah, he made
But
one,
then
but the reason was because there was so many variations of him that were obsessed with conquering different timelines and worlds that they started messing with time in all these different timelines, causing several different branches and everything where time was just kind of going crazy and sort of like you said collapsing on itself, or different universes colliding with each other and
yeah,
causing this big multiversal war. So he ended the war by creating one timeline and making sure that timeline stays the way that it's supposed to. So taking away all free
but
will
that's
out
what
of the matter.
he told us, and then also depending that he's already lied to, like, this entire society that they weren't
Sure.
variants and stuff like that, which makes me, again, believe that that's, like, you know, oh, shit, what was it? When people make those claims in a way,
Mm-hmm.
generally, it's, like, there's always gonna be the existence of others. It's there's, like, Tales of Symphonia, that my favorite game, and it's like the 2 worlds exist together, but they don't know about each other, but they used
Mm-hmm.
to be one full world. And then so it
Right.
kinda gives me that feel where it's like, he ended the war, but then but they're able to exist, but they just don't know about each other, and that's why they had to keep the timeline consistent so that it would never catch wind that there was multiple versions of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they were always so dead set on, like, "No, we have to keep it into, like, one single line," because
Right.
then if it were to ever branch out too much, then it would then connect with, like, the other, like, multiverse, and I think that's now kind of what happened at the very end, was that now he was in, like, a different TVA, which is, like, the hint that he's in a different multiverse, basically.
That there is some. So I'm not in full agreement with you, but there is some merit to your theory. Because, well, first of all, I think Who Remains would have been honest in thinking that he was the only one, because there's no other variations that are trying to kill him at that point because he stopped everything in his mind. But there is
Mhm.
that moment at the beginning of the last episode where they show a galaxy or universe sort of parallel to another, and it was like going into one and out to the other,
Yeah,
before going to that citadel. So it could be that there are two running at that time, and maybe that
mhm.
would explain two different TVAs at that point. Um, but I think He Who Remains was sincere in saying that he was the one who was controlling the one single timeline, and now that he's dead, there's nobody to control it or oversee everything. That
Yeah,
the multiverse will start to exist, and that's what we're seeing in the current MCU with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man No Way Home. We're seeing the
yeah,
ramifications of having a multiverse in the MCU.
yeah, so that's kind of, yeah. So it'll be that's why this is making me more, like, excited to watch Loki.
Yeah.
And it's only gonna be 1 season per week, right? Or
One
not 1 season, 1 episode
one
per
episode per week.
week,
Yes,
right?
I think it's gonna be like season one. There's gonna be 6 episodes. Marvel's, or I should say Disney, because I think it happens with all Disney Plus shows. They're very particular on um how the length of the episodes goes. Sort of determines the number of episodes of a season of that show. Um, so in the case of Loki, they're hour-long episodes, so it's 6 episode length. So
6
they're
episodes, okay.
pretty consistent on that. There's been a couple variations. The only exception is the show that they're working on right now, hopefully after the actor strike, is Daredevil Born Again, which is, I think they said 18 episodes, which is crazy.
What?
It's crazy. And I think that it's going to probably be the same length as the Netflix shows, which had 13 episodes, I think, per season. So
Yeah.
they're probably going to be hour-long episodes. So I'm not looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Daredevil. I'm not looking forward to that much Daredevil, but
Yeah, that seems like they should well, part of me, it's whenever it's, like, these episode lengths, it's sometimes I don't feel that long,
Mhm.
and as long as they do a good job at explaining everything, because I always hate when like, that's why I almost don't like movies these days, because well, with even Spider-Man, um, the Spider-Verse or Into the
Yeah,
Spider-Verse or the one that came out, like that one was pretty long, but, like and it there could've been and I know there's another one coming. They were like, "Oh, like, this is part 1, and there's gonna be
yeah.
part 2." I was like, "Why didn't you just make a show? Just make a show, and
Oh,
then
I
you
would
can
love
take
that.
your time, just take your time
Yeah.
explaining things, and, like, it would be so good." And so I like when they do miniseries because then they're
Mhm.
able to really explain certain things. That's why it's nice now 'cause like, what's it a few years ago when they would do these origin stories, it was like, you get a movie, and
Mhm.
then it never was the greatest thing, but then now they're doing these miniseries, and they're able to really kind of create good stories from them, and
Yeah.
so, like, I'm really enjoying that, but then part of me is like, 18 is like, that's a lot.
I think there's this particular reason that they're doing 18. I'm like, they're
'Cause
not
it's
just
been so
doing it for.
long.
No, it hasn't even been that long. But
It's been a few
I think
years.
I think there's a particular reason. It's just they have a specific reason why in mind why they're doing 18. So I have faith that they're not just putting in a bunch of filler episodes, because there was, as much as I love the Netflix shows, there was a lot of just filler side story that we just didn't care about, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like
In
we're watching
Daredevil?
in Daredevil, all the Marvel Netflix shows, when they licensed the shows to Netflix, um there was five five characters in a crossover of like properties that they gave to Netflix. Um
Oh, it's so but just Daredevil's Marvel?
Daredevil is Marvel, yeah.
Okay. I used
Uh
to know these things.
but there's like we're watching I'm watching
'Cause there's Jessica Jones, there
yeah,
was,
Jessica Jones, the final season of Jessica
Punisher?
Jones is where I'm on. Punisher is one of them, yeah. But like Jessica Jones, for example, there's like this whole like side story with there's for all the seasons, a side story with the lawyer um that's involved with in her life.
Mhm.
And it's usually the point, like I'm watching with my brother and his wife, and it's usually the point where they're like, we don't care. Like, can we just skip
Yeah.
this part? And I'm like, I hear you. I'm like, let's just just
They're
watch
like,
it.
"Ugh."
Yeah.
Right? And, like, unless this has some important information that's gonna
Yeah.
affect the rest of the show, don't add it in there. Like, it just seems
Yeah.
just you know?
I mean, it
I hate
does, but
when they
it is most of it like a huge waste of time, and I'm worried about that for the Daredevil show that they're bringing to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But hopefully they, because with these shows, you don't have like these. Oh, let's go on a side quest with this extra character, like Hunter B-15 doesn't have her own side plot episode, right?
Yeah.
It's no, the focus is on Loki. It's longer time that we don't get to spend with Loki in the movies, so it's more it fleshes out his character more.
Yeah.
But it's not too long where it's like we need to add in a bunch of bullshit that nobody cares about, right? I
Yes.
feel like the 6 episode arc is a perfect length for these type of shows.
Yeah. It's longer than a movie, but
Yeah,
enough to give you ample information to quench your thirst in a way.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how did you feel about like the romance with
With
Loki and
himself.
yeah. Is that not weird? I think it's weird. I'm like, yeah, she's the opposite sex, but it's still you. It's still yourself. Like that, like it's like
Like
a whole
you
other
need to
whole other
love
level
yourself, okay,
of
Court?
narcissism.
Yeah.
No, that's a level of narcissism.
I think it's fitting for the character. I don't know if there's any other character in the MCU that would have gotten away with that feeling
Yeah, that's
as
I was
normal as
rooting
you can make it with
but
Loki, but
yeah, that's like I feel like as I kinda got to know him a bit better, I was like, okay, because when they kind of caused the Nexus event and
which they still
I
don't
was
really
like
explain.
yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like they will because that was like a really big thing.
yeah.
But I remember at first I'm like, "But that's like your sister."
Well,
Kind
no,
of.
it's his, it's an alternate version of himself.
Yeah, which is like but that's like you're still like, you can't have kids, that's the same DNA as you, man.
You don't know
Like,
because
'cause technically
it's alternate DNA.
would it be? Because
I
if
don't
it's
know.
like, if you that's where I like, that's where my mind went, I was like, "They can't
Yeah.
have children, they can't like, this can't
You see
happen."
them more as you see them more of as twins than a copy of each
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
right, and so but then as I kinda got to know him a bit better, I was like, "Okay," like, I'm kind of glad that, this would be the person that he would like,
Hmm.
because then, because he is pretty self-absorbed and stuff like that, so I'm like, "Yeah, you would love yourself, just a
Yeah.
different version of it."
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
So it had to take, some warming up to with that, but I
Sure.
did like Sylvie, though, she was cool and, like,
Were you
strong.
expecting that reveal when they revealed who the other Loki is?
Not at first, and
Mm.
then the minute it happened, I was like, "I remember that figure."
Oh, right.
So then I was like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
and then it clicked in, but it was still a surprise where, seeing it being, like, the female version, which w like
Yeah.
and I feel like that was, like, the, like, top-notch surprise where the, like, opposite sex surprise, and then they gave her such a good role of being this strong,
Yeah.
independent, like, character where she could just be on herself, she's driven, and, she and then he has the respect for her
Hmm.
instead of wooing or trying to save her and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know? So, because I find sometimes with certain movies, like, people don't like them because there's no damsel in distress and stuff. Barbie,
Yeah.
like, you know?
um,
But,
were there any parts that because you haven't delved much like that deep into the MCU, anything not particularly for like the MCU as a whole, but are there any parts of the show or anything that you're confused by or just had like questions about or anything that just like made you think a bit more?
um, not that I can recall, like, the guy I watched it with, he's really big for the universe, so
Yeah.
if I have questions, usually he kinda fills me in, and, so but I'm trying to think. It would like, I feel like they did a really good job on explaining stuff in a
Hmm.
very, consumable way where it wasn't too much, um yeah, I'm trying to, like, think, like, each episode, like, with Loki's mom, and then,
Hmm.
like, um, just, like, it's hard to kinda think back now of anything that because they did do a really good job explaining stuff, and then keeping it still within the realm of Loki without overly explaining, which then, like, you get confused by and then have, like, because the universe is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Um, but, I think there was when he's at the end of time and then President Loki shows up with all the other people.
Hmm.
And, like, they're also kind of Lokis, but a part of me was like, "Are they other Lokis? Are they just people that ended up there that they were like, 'You're gonna be a Loki now because I am the
Yeah.
President Loki.'"
That
Um,
is that sort of confuses me. I just kind of go with it. How
I almost wish
there's
they went a little bit more into that because I remember everyone really wanted that pop figure, was President Loki.
it's because there's a moment in the comics that's kind of emulating where he was I don't read Loki comics, but I'm pretty sure he was running
Mm,
for president.
yeah.
So
So
it
that
was
was
like a
kind of
younger
their,
version of
like,
himself. So
yeah, so maybe that was their take for those people that have read the comics, like,
yeah.
"Here's your President Loki." So I feel there were some moments where they were catering toward the fans
Hmm.
to feel included in that probably, so
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Sylvie herself is kind of like that as well. Um, and there's some other like characters as well. That
like the old guy,
the old guy,
old
yeah.
Loki,
Uh,
retro Loki.
Retro Loki. Is that what the figure's called? Retro Loki?
There was a version where it's retro Loki. We had that version from the show Loki, but then
Yeah,
we got in a slew of these old retro figures for like
from the
what's it,
comics.
Phoenix, like still
Yeah.
like yeah, from X-Men, like all the different figures. And I remember one of them being it was like retro Loki and it was him, but it wasn't from it wasn't from the show. It was like from the original
Yeah.
like old ass Loki. So
Yeah.
but I don't know if that was the official name. I just remember I was like, "It's the retro Loki," because that was from the retro line that we had got in.
Are there any theories that you have for season two?
Um, aside from them already like, how there were multiverses that and then they just kinda got severed and then they weren't allowed to have contact with each other, and then now there is a contact being made.
Hmm.
That's, like, my only theory is that there were other timelines existing. Um, but then they just were never allowed to hear about each other because, again, from my Tales of Symphonia roots, that's what makes sense. How
um,
about you? What theories do you have?
I don't know if it's hard to predict the show because I had no idea what the first show was going to be, or like the first season is going to be about.
Mhm,
Everything just kind of surprised me. As we were going, as they started like announcing stuff that we're gonna start seeing, like Doctor Strange Multiverse Madness, the What If animated series, things like that, and uh, the like the name of the next Avengers movies and stuff. I'm like, oh, they're going full like deep into the multiverse. So
yeah.
like it kind of like anticipated what was going to happen based on just that news and knowledge. Um so for this in the same way, I'm thinking forward ahead like into what's ahead in season phase 6 of Marvel from what
Mhm.
they announced. And so I kind of have an idea that much like season 1, this season 2 is probably not going to end very well. There's not going to be like
Mm,
a proper conclusion. It's going to lead into the
like
Avengers
another
movies.
series. Yeah.
Yeah. Um
Bringing them back
so
again.
So yeah, I'm expecting a lot of multiverse chaos and a lot of maybe like destruction and stuff like that, but much more out of the villain in this series. So I think it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, like, because that's the thing, like, the villain in it wasn't too daunting because you're like, "Oh, it's this variant going around fucking shit up." And then it ends up being the TVA's the villain, but then it ended up being this goofy guy.
Hmm.
So I feel like there is an even more because he was the best version of himself, which we all strive to be the best version of ourselves. But so I feel like the next season we're really gonna meet a terrible, terrible villain, and
Yeah.
hopefully, because I just want like Star Wars, Ahsoka or whatever, like, they just introduced that one villain and
Mhm.
I got the backstory on him, and he seems I'm like, this when you have such good backstory for, like, a villain and give
Yeah.
them such a good purpose and stuff, that creates such a good bad guy. You know,
Right.
you can't just have someone who just wants to rule the world for no apparent reason,
Yeah.
just to rule it. It doesn't make a good villain, but when you have I don't know, it would be a really good lead up to that.
Hmm.
Um, I was gonna say something else, but now I forget.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm like,
Well, on that
"No."
thought, any final thoughts on Loki season 1?
I enjoyed it. It was yeah, it was really enjoyable. And
Right.
I did enjoy the whole TVA thing and, and the twists and turns and the characters that were in it. And it wasn't too jokey either. Because I don't
Right.
know about you, but like I feel like some of the Marvel movies have become
Hmm.
too jokey.
Yeah, that's a
Um
common criticism.
yeah,
Yeah.
and as much as it's like when it first started, it was appreciated, but now it's too much and it kind of really throws you out of that like
I was always in the mind that it wasn't a thing that bothered me. It's a thing that I look forward to, having the sort of harmony with the moments of comedy, with moments of action and seriousness and everything.
yeah.
There's a proper blend for that. I feel like, not to talk about Joss Whedon, but I feel like he kind of blends that kind of stuff very well in his projects.
Mhm.
Um, but but I
But
I
that's
I
their
used to
fault, I
feel that
feel.
way. Then there became a point with Thor: Love and Thunder where I'm like, or even some of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that we're going doing a little too much.
Yeah, it's
It's not
like
a proper blend at that point.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like the actors are too actory, and they're too, like, themselves in a way. Fuck, and, like, it's yeah, because Chris Pratt, it's almost like he's, like, the same person all like, the whole time, and then or, like, he's just himself and, like and then you kinda see it in, like, other movies, I guess, and there
Hmm.
was someone else it's like Vince Vaughn,
Vince
and,
Vaughn.
like,
Yeah,
he
Vince Vaughn's
yeah.
very much his
Yeah,
himself.
himself. Yeah, and he just is himself, like,
Yeah.
every single like, no matter what part he plays, he ends up doing one of, like, a Vince Vaughn tangent
Hmm.
and is himself. So I feel like, yeah, there should be an appropriate amount. So I was glad that it wasn't too jokey with this,
Yeah.
and it kind of really stuck to it. But again, I feel like with Loki, he is a little bit more of a serious character because he's a villain.
Yeah.
Um, but I again, I do enjoy the jokes, but I feel like sometimes it was then
A little
maybe
too
that's why I
much.
didn't really watch the most recent Guardians of the Galaxy. I was just kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
Like,
Is
so did Josh is Josh Whedon is he one of the people for the Marvel universe?
he worked on the first two Avengers movies.
Okay. He's the one
And
who did Firefly.
yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Firefly.
Yeah,
I've
same.
been watching it. Love it.
I
And
want to
there yeah,
rewatch
there's
it.
the jokes in it that are hilarious.
Yeah, he
And how
like
it is
he does
jokey. Yeah.
he does a perfect blend of that stuff. And I think he did
Yes.
a good job with the first two Avengers movies in that regard as well.
Yeah.
Um, but um, don't want to talk too much about him. I love a lot of his work. I try to separate the artist from the art. He's definitely not a guy I
Oh,
like
because there's
talking about anymore. Yeah.
got it.
A lot of stuff happened where don't want to talk
Think
about him
I
anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyways.
But yeah, I don't want this to go too long, but I would like to know. You also watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'd just like to know your thoughts on that,
Wait, that's the live action one or the cartoon one?
the cartoon one.
Cart one? So fucking good.
Did you watch the first one? I
N
don't know if I asked you.
kind of not r like, I know what happens.
Sure. The
I feel
first one is so good. I
yeah, I
just want to
wanna
say it
rewatch it.
was it was my I'd still say it is my favorite Spider-Man movie.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
wanna rewatch it just so that I can rewatch it, but I remember it was on when I it's one of those moments, I don't know if you ever get this, or used to, living with other people, but I remember being on the computer and then my significant other at the time was watching it, and then so I was kind of watching it here and there, and then
Hmm.
I joined at the last bit and kind of watched the end of it, but then by that time it's like you
Yeah.
kinda know what's going on, you kinda don't, so that's how I watched the first one, but I remember still enjoying it even though I only had gotten, like, bits and parts of it,
Yeah.
and then when I watched the second one in theaters, I was like
Right.
like, the whole time just like, "Oh my god. Oh, oh my god." Like, I was just like, the whole time, I just enjoyed every little bit of it, and it was funny. Um, yeah, I really, really liked it, and I was so bummed because, like, leading up to the very end, I'm just like,
Yeah.
"There's so much they have to do." I'm like, "How fucking long has it
Yeah, I
been?" Like,
know.
"Oh my god." Like, I'm like, "Has it been, like, 3 hours?" Like, it feels like it's been so long, and I'm like, "They still have so
Yeah.
much to cover. Am I gonna be here for another 2 hours?" And then it just, like, ends, and I was like, I was like, bro, I was like, they should have made that into a miniseries
when they
if they
first
were if they were gonna do
announced
that.
this movie, it was going to be called, I think it was going to be called Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and Part 2.
Okay.
So it was originally announced as a two-parter, so I've
Hmm.
always had that in my mind. But um I didn't realize until it was out that so many people are not like me and don't follow this stuff online.
Yeah.
so so I feel like most people were not under that expectation, so a lot of people were not expecting that ending.
Yeah. Then
Yeah.
when it just ends, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I, I have to wait now. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
And then soon after the strikes happen, they're like, we're delaying this indefinitely. So like
Yeah.
we don't know how long we're gonna wait.
Right. Well,
Uh,
apparently the strike's kind of over now. Like they're
just
in
for the
talks and agreement
writers.
and stuff.
Just for
Oh,
the
just for
writers.
the
It
writers.
sounds like
Okay.
the actor side
Is
is not on the same
I mean, they
path
need
right
to.
now.
I feel like now's the time to do the strike to protect themselves against the AIs. So all that jazz, all that drama.
Yeah,
So
even on the writer side as well, but
yeah,
they have protections for that, and I'm betting that actors are going to have the same protection at the end. I think actors are going to
yeah,
have the protections that they're asking for at the end of the day too, because the writers got everything or most things that they wanted anyway.
yeah,
So I think it's just going to follow suit. The actors are the next in line. Video game voice actors are going to be the next thing. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
Auto workers, UPS, all everything's happening all at once right now. So,
Right? They're like, we're gonna, because if you stop the work, if we stopped working,
hmm
then they're not gonna make any money.
yeah, all these studios need the workers more than
Yeah,
workers need the studios.
exactly. They got their they made them realize that
Yeah.
the value of those people. So, which is
But
good.
back to Spider-Man.
Back to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um
great movie.
yeah.
I like they covered so much. Um, yeah, it was great. I really liked it.
One thing you did mention, like bringing Spider-Man into a series. I would love that just
Yeah.
because so Spider-Man is kind of like Marvel's Mickey Mouse. He's the big character. Everybody likes
Mhm.
Spider-Man. Everybody wants to see Spider-Man. So he's the biggest property, right? Um so for that reason, we don't really see a lot of series for Spider-Man. We get a refresh of like the animated kids cartoons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um
like why?
but
Give us more.
yeah, but I would like a more I don't know. I would like a more serious like series out of the character because I think the best parts of the character in the comics, he's much more grounded. He's got
Mhm.
an expansive rogues gallery. There's a lot of characters in his life that are very well like developed, and we should have more time with them as well.
Yeah.
But because he's such a big popular character, he's always in these big feature movies where it's the end of the world, and he needs
Yeah.
to. It's like this really big villain at the end of the day, and we don't get a lot of that smaller stuff that we get from the comics. So it's really
Yeah.
upsetting being a Spider-Man fan and just getting like the biggest action movie ever instead of like the proper Spider-Man stories that we get from the comics. Um,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. I definitely agree that I wish they yeah, done more. There's just there's yeah, it's such good characters. I remember
hmm
watching the show as a kid. Like that was one of my I believe it was one of my favorite shows when I was really young. I
The
was
animated one.
yeah, I was
hmm
Dr. Lizard for
Yeah,
Halloween.
Dr. Connors. Yeah.
Not yeah, I was him. Yeah, and my brother was
Yeah.
like the Green Goblin, even though he's orange. So,
Well, yeah,
or the
it was the
Hobgoblin,
Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin. Yeah,
Hobgoblin.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I wish they should after after that movie
hmm
and doing like a part two. I'd be like, just make a fucking mini series, man.
Yeah.
Just
Um,
come on.
Well, and this the Spider-Verse movies are great because there's a lot of different variations of Spider-Man, and we get to see a whole bunch of them in these movies, and
Yeah,
it's nice introducing these characters to others, especially Miles. Like
yeah,
Miles had like a big comic debut. It was very controversial because he debuted at the time where they were killing off Peter Parker, and they're like, we're gonna replace him with this um uh black Hispanic kid.
yeah.
And so a lot of people thought
People don't like change.
Marvel's doing the W word, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Miles was like a huge hit, and he's definitely has his moment in the spotlight here, and the comics are great. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that not only Miles is taking focus here, we get Gwen Stacy and all the other side characters that are
Yeah.
great. So these are really
Even,
cool.
like, there's, like, reference to Gwen Stacy, like, because she would be a good series to follow as like, again, they could do the same thing that Marvel does with all their little superheroes with,
Hmm.
like, these characters, especially they introduced so many, but they talk about how she spent a lot of time with the young Spider-Man, and so, like, I was like, "What did they do?"
Say
Like,
that
that
again,
would
just
be
because Discord's
oh,
being really weird again, so I didn't
oh,
catch all that.
no worries. With Gwen Stacy, because when she goes into the multiverses and kind of works for them for a bit, and then she spends a lot of time with the punk Spider-Man, like that would
Hmm.
be interesting to kind of have a branch off to know like what kind of things they did, and
Yeah,
especially when she's working for the multiverse, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, so kind of like that big lump
hmm,
that would be they could totally expand on.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. So yeah, we both loved Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Looking
Yep.
forward to more. Um, it was great having you on this podcast. Um,
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
and a different perspective on these discussions for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll have you back on talking Loki season 2,
Yeah.
and we can continue that. But
Yeah, we could rehash our theories and then talk if any of them
yeah,
happened and came true. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, revisit these discussions. The big thing though that we need to do is talk about gaming because we haven't in a while. Um,
Yes.
and the Game Awards is coming up. I don't know if you're free on the Game
Oh,
Awards
shit.
date.
Give me some what are the dates
It's just the one day. It's
for
I
the one
don't
day?
remember which. I know it's early December. I think it's on a Thursday
Should be
night.
doable.
Okay.
Thursday night? Yeah, totally doable if it's a Thursday night.
Okay.
Should be. Should be.
So we'll be. I mean, I'll be here. I'll be reacting to that stuff on this channel. So definitely looking forward to that.
Yep.
Our next plan. I mean, we have been talking about the Xbox Activision thing. I feel like that's all done and over with at this point. So
Yes.
the next big thing is we're going to be talking about what is the game of the year. So hopefully we'll
Yeah.
be talking about that soon.
Yes.
But this has been going on for what are we about an hour? Cool.
Yes.
We
Roughly
never
about an
go an
hour, yeah.
hour. We're always like 2 hours now. This is
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's it. Are you looking forward to Loki season 2? Let us know in the comments. If you have any questions, theories of anything that's going on, maybe we'll read them
Let's
in the
hear it.
next podcast. And if you want to see more Spawn Trap, including the gaming podcast, subscribe and then follow for more. And go follow Court as well. Court FTW almost everywhere.
Almost everywhere,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.